والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Naeem, what is a Sahih book? What do you mean authentic book? What are you on about? Qasim? Because this is the easiest question. Haider, what's a Sahih book? Simple, a book which contains Sahih al-Hadith. Right. What's a Musannaf Nuh? مرفوعات. You're very close. Don't give up. The موقوفات, the مقطوعات. مصنف are those books which focus on مرفوعات, the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ and of the Sahaba, موقوفات, and مقطوعات of the Tabi'een, and focuses more on the Sahaba and Tabi'een. Musa, what's Musnad? Musnad. Categorically. Which category? By the names of the Sahaba. It's ordered on the names of the Sahaba. Shazad, what's the Sunan? On the order of the chapters of fiqh. Who's that hiding at the back? Is that Yusuf? Yusuf, why do you always hide behind someone with a chair? Come on, come here. Awab, what's a jami'? Keep forgetting your name. What was your name? Yusuf, that's it. I got two Yusuf, three Yusufs. We got four Yusufs actually. We got Saturday Yusuf as well. How many Yusuf? What's a jami'? Eight. So 8 different topics. You don't need to, I mean, it's good if you can know all 8. But have a general idea that jami' contains not only fiqh, but aqidah, tafsir, seerah, raqa'iq, fada'il, hasafnas, virtues, and so on. Come on, you guys, these are the simple questions. I've not even asked you the detail of the conditions of each book and how each book is authored, and it's simple. You should know what these words mean. Anyways, Bismillah ta'ala, today we'll try to take as much as we can today, inshallah. Might even finish it today, depending on how quick I go through it. Bismillah ta'ala. So we're going to continue today, inshallah, from the 4th century. So page 83. Okay. Alhamdulillah, we finished the first 3 centuries of Islam regarding hadith and the main books within those 3 centuries. Now we're going to move on to the 4th century. Now what the 4th century basically did is that it continued and carried on with the same work as the works in the 3rd century. So there were the same types of books from Sunan and so on. And then there were also some other new types of books as well, and we'll go through some of them. The most famous of them are the ones that I've put here. The first of them is known as Sahih ibn Huzaifah. Sahih ibn Huzaifah. Ibn Huzaifah, rahimahullah, he passed away 311. In the year 311. And after Bukhari and Muslim, from the books which are Sahih, this is the most authentic one. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail with how these books are written. Inshallah, if you study later on and you want to specialize more in hadith, then you can study that. But now I just need you to know, and if you hear the names of these books, you know what they are. Okay? So we have Sahih ibn Khuzaymah. After that, we have Sahih ibn Hibban. Sahih ibn Hibban. Ibn Hibban, he passed away 354. Now, in terms of authenticity, it comes just after Ibn Khuzaymah. So you have Ibn Khuzaymah, and then you have Ibn Hibban. But one thing about Ibn Hibban is the way he ordered it is in a very peculiar way. It's not as straightforward as the other books. So he mentions himself that it's split into 5 parts, when I've written those 5 parts for you. Firstly, commandments, then prohibitions, then the things that a person needs to know, then things which are permissible, then actions of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Suyuti, he says Ibn Hibban has innovated a way of ordering his book. So it's not an easy book to navigate. When it comes to the other books, for example, you want to know a ruling or a hadith pertaining to wudu. You go to purification, you go to wudu and you'll find it. Something to do with salah, book of salah, you'll find it. But in here, it's a lot more difficult to navigate. Obviously, these 5 are just general. Even within this, there's a lot of back and forth, and it's not in an easy order. The 3rd book is Mustadrak. Okay? Now Mustadrak, it's all written down what it is. Okay? So the summary is that a book which is a Mustadrak, this is a name that you need to know. Just like you have Musnad, Sahih, Jami', Sunan and so on. You need to know what a Mustadrak is. Mustadrak is where you get a book, and then that book, you look at the conditions of the author in that book. So he's put condition 1, 2 and 3. Then you look at all those ahadith that fulfill those conditions but are not in that book. So, for example, Mustadrak of Imam Hakim is called Al-Mustadrak al-Sahihain. The Mustadrak upon the 2 Sahihs, meaning the Mustadrak upon Bukhari and Muslim. What he did is that he looked at Bukhari and Muslim, he looked at the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, and then any hadith that he could find in the other books, whether it's other Kutub al-Tis'ah or any other book, right? If he could find any hadith that he thought fulfill the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, but are not in Bukhari and Muslim, then he would add it into this book. Does that make sense? Yusuf, does that make sense? A bit. So what is a Mustadrak? A Mustadrak is when you look at the conditions or methodology of a certain book, and any hadith which fulfills those conditions or follows that methodology and is not in that book, then if you compile all those ahadith, that book is known as a mustakhraj. It's known as mustadrak. Mustakhraj is something else we get to. So mustadrak, one more time, or the mustadrak of Imam Hakim is where he looked at Bukhari and Muslim. He looks at all of the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim, and any hadith, because remember we said Bukhari and Muslim are summaries. They're not massive books. But all of the hadith that fulfill the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim and are not in Bukhari and Muslim, then he added them into his book. Now, even though that's the case, you would think, okay, if that is the case, then this book must be a really authentic book because he's following the condition of Bukhari and Muslim. But the reality is that is not the case. And even though that was his objective, the reality is that there are many weak ahadith in this book. That's why it comes at level 3. Ibn Khuzaymah, then Ibn Hibban, and then Imam Hakim. Now, Imam Hakim was a great scholar of hadith, a very, from the greatest scholars of hadith. And we're going to study when we talk about Mustalah al-Hadith as well. Some of, he's got a book in that, Ma'rifat al-Hadith and Anwa al-Hadith, and he's got a lot of works in it. So now the question arises, how is it that if that was his condition, that he's going to follow Bukhari or Muslim, how is it that he has weak hadith and is weaker than Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban? And there's quite a few. Ibn Huzaifah and Hibban have a weak hadith, but a few, not too many. Okay, obviously they're not on the level of Bukhari and Muslim because the whole Ummah has agreed upon Bukhari and Muslim. Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban, they're good. Yani most of what's in there is authentic. But Al-Hakim is a bit more problematic. Okay, I mentioned to you some of the statements. Some ulama have gone to extremes. I mean, if you look at the statement of Abu Sa'ad al-Malini halfway through the page, I've typed it for you. He said, I've read the Mustadrak upon the two sheikhs, yani upon Bukhari and Muslim, which is authored by Al-Hakim from the beginning to end. I didn't even find a single hadith upon their conditions. Imam al-Zahabi comments on this statement and he says, this is arrogance and extremism. He's going overboard, he's having it's not. He's saying that there's not one hadith which fulfills the condition of Bukhari and Muslim. He's over-exaggerating. That's not the case. There's a lot of sahih hadith, but at the same time, there are still a lot of weaker hadith. So if he's such a great scholar, then why did he make mistakes? Now, there are two main answers. The first answer is that when he wrote it towards the end of his life, which means that he was very old. You know, when this person gets to very old age, then the memory starts to deteriorate. It's not the same as how a person's memory is when they are in their prime. And obviously, you know, the way they would write books before wasn't not like how you type now. You would just write it on whatever you could find and so on. So he wrote it towards the end of his age. And secondly, they say that he didn't revise his book. He just wrote it and then just gave it. And obviously, you guys know you write one text message, how many typos you make. So never mind, if you write a book, a full hadith book, and you don't revise it, then obviously it's going to have mistakes within there. There is a you can get a print where Imam al-Zahabi rahimahullah, he's gone through the whole Mustadrak and he comments. So anytime a big hadith does come, then if Imam al-Zahabi says quiet, then it's authentic. But if he comments, then that means it would be weak. And that's known as muwafaqat al-Zahabi, the agreements of Imam al-Zahabi. Would he agree or would he disagree in regards to that book? How many ahadith are there? There are 8,803 hadith in his book. 8,803. As for Ibn Hibban, then he has 7,491 hadith. 7,491 hadith. The next book, it says Sharh Mushkil al-Athar and Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar. Now, both of these are by Imam al-Tahawi. Both of these books are written by Imam al-Tahawi, who passed away in the year 321. The one who's got the famous Aqidah book, Al-Aqidah al-Tahawiyah, Imam al-Tahawi. What is Sharh Mushkil al-Athar? Mushkil, similar to Urdu, Mushkila, even in Arabic, problematic. What he's basically done is that all of the ahadith that seemingly contradict one another, he's brought them together and he's answered those contradictions. So we know in the Quran and Sunnah there's no contradictions. As Allah says, أَفَلَا تَدَبُّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Do they not ponder over the Quran? If they were to look at other than the Quran, then they would find many contradictions. The Quran and Sunnah does not have contradictions, but sometimes when it comes to our knowledge, due to the deficiency of our knowledge, sometimes it may seem like there's a contradiction in some of the texts. So what Imam al-Tahawi he did is that he got all of those ahadith that seemingly contradict one another, brought them together, and then reconciles between them. The next book that he's got is Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar. Now, a lot of people get confused between these two books. These are two separate books by Imam al-Tahawi. Al-Ma'ani al-Athar is basically a hadith book. Now, because Imam al-Tahawi was actually Hanafi, he gathered all those ahadith that aid the Hanafi madhab. He gathered all those ahadith that aided the Hanafi madhab. So what the two different types of books are what? The first one is general, where he reconciles between ahadith that seemingly contradict one another. And the second one is those ahadith that aid the Hanafi madhab. Just like Bulugh al-Maram or Ibn Hajar aids more of the Shafi'i madhab. And so on. That's something normal, right? That many of the ulama have done. So that was his book. After that, we come to Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir by Al-Tabarani. Imam Al-Tabarani had a number of books, and from them he had three mu'ajim, three mu'jams. Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, the big mu'jam, Al-Mu'jam Al-Awsat, the middle mu'jam, and Al-Mu'jam Al-Saghir, the small mu'jam. What are the differences between the three? Because one's big, one's medium, one's small. Right? So what is actually the difference? I've written it for you. There are three different books. Even though the middle and small one are similar, the third one's really different, which is the big one is different. So Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir is ordered upon the names of the companions, and it begins with the 10 promised paradise, and it mentions the rest of the companions in alphabetical order. There's approximately 25,000 hadith. Basically, it's like a musnad. It's like the musnad of Imam Ahmad. Simple way to remember it is the mu'jam of Al-Tabarani. Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, the big mu'jam of Imam Al-Tabarani, is similar to the musnad of Imam Ahmad. So even though he didn't call it a musnad, it's very similar to a musnad. The second book, which is Al-Mu'jam Al-Awsat, is what he narrates from his teachers and not from the companions. And he mentions approximately 2,000 teachers. So now he's just mentioning, this teacher told me this and this, like that. And then Mu'jam Al-Saghir is similar to Mu'jam Al-Awsat, but it's basically a summary of it, where it's a lot shorter and he only mentions one hadith for each teacher. So Al-Kabir, the big one, is like Musnad Imam Ahmad, 25,000 hadith. But Imam Ahmad has 27,000. Al-Mu'jam Al-Awsat, he has 2,000 teachers and he mentions a hadith that is taken from them. And then Al-Saghir, the small one, is one hadith from each teacher. So these are the three mu'jams. We have Sunan Ad-Daraqutni. After the Kitab Al-Sunan by Ad-Daraqutni. Ad-Daraqutni passed away 385. And this book is a Sunan. So what does that mean? It's ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. And in this he gave a lot of importance to fiqh al-maqaran, and what the different scholars have said regarding these issues. So it's not limited to one madhab. And they say, subhanAllah, that it's reported that he narrated this entire book to his students from memory. After Daraqutni, we have Imam al-Bayhaqi, who has a book called Sunan al-Kubara. Al-Bayhaqi passed away 458. And it's a Sunan, so that means it's ordered upon the chapters of fiqh. So Sunan al-Kubra by Imam al-Bayhaqi. After that, now we have some books known as Mustakhrajat. Mustakhrajat. Mustakhrajat is similar to Mustadrak, but it is different. Because this focuses more on the chains of narration. That takhrij, mustakhraj. Right? What he does is that he goes to one book, and the hadith which are already in it, hadith which are already in that book, he'll find different chains of narration for those same hadith. For example, Imam Bukhari would say in the beginning, hadith innamal a'mal binniyat, he's mentioned his chain of narration. Right? Bukhari meant to heard from Al-Humaydi, heard from his teacher, heard from Alqamah to Umar, and so on. If somebody is doing a mustakhraj on Bukhari, he would come to that same hadith and he'll find so many different chains of narration for that same hadith. Okay? So, the difference in Mustadrak and Mustakhraj, Mustadrak looks outside of the book. Mustadrak looks outside. So, what are the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim? Okay, what are those hadith that fulfill those conditions from other books? And as for Mustakhraj, it looks at the hadith which is already in there. Can I find more chains of narration for that same hadith? And there's many benefits for that. Because sometimes a different chain of narration will also, even the wording of the hadith can be slightly different. Maybe the person was ambiguous in that narration, but through another narration, the person's name is mentioned, so we know who it is. Or maybe the meaning of a word is mentioned. It also allows you to grade the hadith. The more chains of narration you have, you can grade the hadith. Remember we said Hasan لغيره, Sahih لغيره, the supporting narrations will make it stronger, and so on. And I mentioned 6 benefits and they're all written for you on page 87. Then, the 5th century onwards, so we finished the 4th century. Now the 5th and 6th century, this is where most of narration kind of is coming to an end now. When it comes to narrating a hadith, all the hadith that would have been narrated are all documented in books. That's why the majority of the books now are books which work upon the previous books which are already there. So if Bukhari Muslim is already there, now people are working upon that, whether they're doing mustadrak or they're doing mustakhraj, or they are summarizing it, or they are doing, they're working upon the books which are already there. No one's going to bring new ahadith now. So you have different books. The first one I've written here is books on Kutub al-Sittah. So what this does is that some of them would get the 6 books of hadith and combine them together into one big book. Alright? And there's different ones, and sometimes what they would do is, it's called al-Jam' bayna al-Sahihain. Al-Jam' bayna al-Sahihain, where they combine between Bukhari and Muslim. Huh? Yeah, of course, because if they're combining between 2 books, it's going to be bigger. So, there's many books like that. So it's one book now, but it has all the hadith which are both in Bukhari and Muslim. Okay, there's many famous ones, and from the famous one I've highlighted it by Al-Ishbili. There's one by Al-Ishbili. That's the one that a lot of people memorize and so on. And then there are some which do all 6 books together. For example, the last one, Jami' al-Usul Ahadith al-Rasul by Ibn al-Athir. That's really voluminous. Okay, so there's those types of books. There's also books which are known as books of ataraf. In Arabic, the taraf means on the side of something. For example, this is called a desk. What's a desk in Arabic? Maktab. Taraf al-maktab means like this side over here that I've got here. So this water ball I've put wherever I put it on taraf of this desk. Okay. Well, so if you know that meaning, what this basically does is that it'll start and just mention the first few words of the hadith, and that's it. It won't complete the hadith. It's the first few words, then basically, etc., etc., ... right? And then it'll just talk about the chains of narration about the hadith. So basically, it's like a dictionary for hadith, or like a search engine for hadith. You want to know the ruling of a hadith? It's not about studying the wording of the hadith. It's about the chains of narration. So you just go where you find the first few words. Okay, yeah, this is the hadith. Right, open that up and read it all. It talks all about the chains of narration. So this is known as ataraf. So obviously this is similar to, you could say like mustakhraj, in the sense that the point of it is that they're trying to get the chains of narration. They're trying to get more chains of narration for the same hadith. You have something called Kutub al-Zawaid. Zawaid. Zawaid, from the word ziyada, which means increase or extra. Basically, these are books, when you compare 2 books, for example, you'll say Zawaid Muslim ala al-Bukhari. The extra ahadith of Muslim are those ahadith that are only in Muslim and are not in Bukhari. Because there are some ahadith which are in Bukhari and Muslim. Or which ahadith are the ones which are only in Muslim and not in Bukhari? للزوائد. And sometimes they call it Afrad Muslim. So these are books of Zawaid. Then you have books of Mawdu'at. Mawdu'at means fabricated hadith. So just as before they would collect the hadith which are authentic, they had books now which would gather those ahadith which are fabricated to teach the people that these are fabricated hadith. And the most famous of them is by Ibn al-Jawzi. But even then, not everything in there is correct. In fact, there's a hadith which is in Sahih Muslim, you put it in there. So the ulama, they criticize his book quite a lot, but it's the most famous one and one of the earliest ones. You have books of Tarajum al-Ruwah, the biographies of Ruwah, the narrators. So basically talking about this narrator, is he authentic or is he not authentic? So you have the books like Tarikh al-Kabir by Imam al-Bukhari. You have Jarh wa Ta'adil by Ibn Hatim al-Razi, Mizan al-I'tidal by Imam al-Dhahabi, Al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal by Abd al-Ghani al-Maqdisi, who is the one that wrote Umdat al-Ahkam. This one, Al-Kamal fi Asma' al-Rijal, is really big. It was summarized in the book Tahdhib al-Kamal. Tahdhib basically means like a summary. So the previous one was called Al-Kamal by Abd al-Ghani al-Maqdisi. The next book is Tahdhib al-Kamal by Imam al-Mizzi. This is probably one of the main books, most famous books when it comes to talking about the narrators. Tahdhib al-Kamal by Imam al-Mizzi. But he basically summarized it. But even then, that's still big, still voluminous. So comes along Ibn Hajar. And Ibn Hajar, what does he do? He's called Tahdhib al-Tahdhib. He summarized the summary. And you can get it in about 4 volumes. And then Ibn Hajar realized that's still too much. So he's got Taqrib al-Tahdhib, where he summarized it again. He summarized the summary of the summary into 1 volume, where he leaves out what the scholars have said, just gives you the ruling. This person, trustworthy. This person, weak. This person, liar. Just that. So for like a normal student who wants a quick, just wants some sort of a research, then Tahdhib al-Tahdhib by Ibn Hajar is okay. If you just want the ruling, then Taqrib al-Tahdhib. Otherwise, Tahdhib al-Kamal is the one that you should go to. What time is it done? 50? 54. Okay. We have books on knowing the companions. So there are some books which they talk about the companions, not only in terms of biography, but in terms of just everything to do with them and narrating a hadith and so on. And from the most famous of these books are these 3. The first is Al-Isti'ab fi Ma'rifat al-Ashab. Al-Isti'ab by Ibn Abd al-Barr. Which other books did Ibn Abd al-Barr write? I mentioned 2 books before. Sorry, say Muslim. You guys are mixing up. Sharaf Muslim was Imam Nawawi. He's got 2 explanations for the same book. The Muwatta Imam Malik. He's got Al-Istidhkar and Tamheed. Al-Istidhkar is more fiqhi explanation, and Tamheed is more of a hadithi explanation. Anyways, he's got this book, Al-Isti'ab fi Ma'rifati al-Ashab. Another one is Ust al-Ghaba by Ibn al-Athir. Ust al-Ghaba. And the third book is Al-Isabah fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba by Ibn Hajar. Al-Isabah fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba by Ibn Hajar. So even if you don't remember the full name, just memorize Al-Isti'ab, Ust al-Ghaba, and Al-Isabah. These 3, especially Al-Isabah by Ibn Hajar is good. Then you have kutub of Takhrij. Takhrij is those books that will come to certain ahadith and basically study and research that hadith to give you a ruling on that hadith. That's what Takhrij is. Takhrij is where you get a hadith, you get all the different chains of narration regarding that hadith, you get the aqwal of the muhaddithun regarding the narrators, and you try to come to a conclusion upon the authenticity of that hadith, whether it's authentic, da'if, hasan li ghayrihi, and so on. We have kutub al-Gharib. What's al-Gharib? That's the translation of it. What's the technical meaning? 1. That's not the meaning here. So before you write that, al-Gharib has 2 meanings in hadith. The first is what we mentioned, where the lowest number in one of the levels from the narrators is 1. Like hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Umar is the only one, then the Alqam is only tabi'i, and then the next person's one, the next person's one, right? But gharib here, strange literally means the strange words, i.e. those words which come in a hadith and you don't know their meanings. Basically like a dictionary. What's the meaning of this word? What's the meaning of that word? Kutub al-Gharib are those books which are specific to the meaning of of words in hadith. And the most famous of them is the one which I've highlighted, which is An-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith by Ibn al-Athir. An-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith by Ibn al-Athir. Okay, and with that, alhamdulillah, we've finished most of these books. We've got a couple of other chapters left. One to do with books of ahkam, and then we've got a little introduction on Mustalah al-Hadith. Then after that, we finished the introduction on the history of hadith and documentation of hadith, and then we'll talk about Imam al-Nawawi and the book 40 Hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. I'll talk about it generally, the conditions, how is it written, what are the explanations of it, and so on. Inshallah, we'll try to take all of that today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We'll stop now for Maghrib, and inshallah continue after Maghrib, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So the next topic is books of Ahkam. Kutubu al-Ahkam. Kutub al-Ahkam, the word Ahkam from the word Hukam, which means rulings. I.e. these are books which contain those ahadith pertaining to rulings, i.e. pertaining to fiqh. Pertaining to fiqh. And we could say the first one who wrote a book of this type was Imam Abu Dawood in his Sunan. Because Kutub al-Ahkam is basically Sunan. But the terminology Sunan is used more in the books of the Salaf, the earlier scholars, and in the later scholars, they would just come under the general topic of Kutub al-Ahkam. Now, obviously, before Abu Dawood, we had Bukhari, Muslim, and all of these other books which had these ahadith, but they were more jawami', meaning they had not only fiqh, but other issues, other ahadith, other topics within there as well. Now, Kutub al-Ahkam are of two types. The first is Kutub Musnadah, i.e. those books of Ahkam which have complete chains of narrations, like the Sunan of Abu Dawood. And there's so many other books as well. We have Sahih Ibn Jarud and Abdul Haqq al-Ishbili in his book Al-Ahkam al-Kubra. No, okay, I was muted online. So let me just quickly repeat what I'm saying. The books of Ahkam are known as those books which contain the ahadith pertaining to fiqh, basically similar to Sunan. But Sunan is a terminology used more for the books of the earlier scholars from the Salaf, and the later scholars we call it Kutub of Ahkam. The first of them was Imam Abu Dawood, the first one to write a book, we could say, in Kutub al-Ahkam. And before him, they had books which had hadith pertaining to fiqh. However, they were jawami', so they had fiqh and other subjects, topics within there as well. And the books of Ahkam are of two types. The first are Musnada, meaning they have the full chain of narration. Like the Sunan of Abu Dawood, he has a chain of narration going back to the Prophet ﷺ. And there are other books as well, like Sahih Ibn Jarud and Abdul Haqq al-Ishbili, and so on, in his book Ahkam al-Kubra. The second type is the main one, the more famous one that we know when we talk about Kutub al-Ahkam, the ones which are غير musnadah. They're not musnadah, meaning they don't have the full chain of narration. But all they have is the name of the Sahabi and then the hadith. Just like we have hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. When we study it, inshallah, the first hadith, what does Imam al-Nawawi say? He says, عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال, on the authority of the leader of the believers, Abu Hafs, Umar ibn Khattab. He said that I heard the Messenger of Allah ﷺ say, then he starts the hadith. As for the whole chain of narration, skips it all out, leaves it all out, and leaves in only the name of the companion. And that is because these are secondary books of hadith. And if you want to know the whole chain of narration, you go back to the primary books of hadith, you go back to Bukhari and Muslim, and you can find all of the details there. So there are many books, and I've given you a list of so many books. And I'll comment on them. Now, if it does get too many books, especially today we've taken a lot of books anyway, I have highlighted some of the main books that you need to know. So the ones which are highlighted, they are the main ones that you need to know. And as for the others, I'll mention extra benefit just in case later on. If you want to increase in your knowledge regarding these books, then you have your notes for that already. So we have the first one written is Ahkam al-Sughra by al-Ishbili. So Ishbili, as you notice, had two books. I wrote the first one in the Musnadah, Ahkam al-Kubra. So Ahkam al-Sughra is very similar, but he's taken out the chains of narration. Then we have Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah, he has two books. Both of them are called Al-Umdah. And the first one is known as Al-Umdah al-Kubra, and the second is known as Al-Umdah al-Sughra. Kubra meaning big and Sughra meaning small. The famous Umdatul Ahkam that is studied and memorized, that's al-Sughra, that's the small one. That is the small one. That's why it's the one that I have highlighted, and I've not highlighted the other one. And inshallah we're going to talk a bit more about this book shortly, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We have another book called Khulasatul Ahkam by Imam al-Nawawi. Khulasatul Ahkam is a great book by Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah. But he only reached the book of zakah. He only reached the book of zakah and he passed away, rahimahullah, before he could complete it. But even that, even just by reaching Kitab al-Zakah, they say that there are 3,000 hadith. He gathered 3,000 hadith just by reaching the book of zakah. And some of the ulama, like Ibn Mulaqin, they have said that if he was to finish his book, then it would have been Adimat al-Nazar or Adimat al-Nazir. Nothing else would have been similar to this book. Then we have a hadith al-Mukhtarah by Diya al-Maqdisi. And this is a book which is similar to the book of Imam Hakim. It's got a similar style to it. But Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah really praises this book and mentions it's better than the Mustadrak of Imam al-Hakim. We have Ahkam al-Kubra by At-Tabari, and he also has a Sughra as well. We have another book called Al-Muntaqa by Abu al-Barakat Ibn Taymiyyah. The full name, or the longer name, is that they call it Muntaqa al-Akhbar. Muntaqa al-Akhbar. Or sometimes they say Al-Muntaqa. Muntaqa al-Akhbar. I can't remember the rest. I think it's fi Hadithi Sayyid al-Abrar or something along that lines. But it's famously known as Al-Muntaqa. Al-Muntaqa is by Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, which Ibn Taymiyyah? This one is by the grandfather. So the famous Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, it's not him, it's his grandfather. The famous Shaykh al-Islam, he is known as the grandson, the one that we always hear. But his grandfather was also a great scholar of hadith and a great scholar in the Hanbali madhab. And his name was Abu al-Barakat Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah. Abu al-Barakat Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah. He has this book, Al-Muntaqa in Hadith. And inshallah we'll talk about it shortly as well. Another book is Kitab al-Imam by Ibn Daqiq al-Eid. And then he's got a summary of it, which is known as Kitab al-Ilmam. And this is, again, a very good book. And what's funny as well is that he has explained it himself. And his explanation is a very long and in-depth explanation. He explained 25 hadith in 5 volumes. He explained 25 hadith in 5 volumes. For example, he came to one hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib, where the Prophet said, "Umirna bi sab'in wa nahana an sab'a." We were commanded with 7 things and we were prohibited from 7 things. He said, he mentioned 400 issues pertaining to that one hadith. Mentioned 400 issues pertaining to that one hadith. That whole hadith comes in one full volume. That whole one hadith is just one full volume. We have the other book, Al-Muharrar fil Hadith by Ibn Abdul Hadi. Again, this is a very important book. The student of Shaykh al-Islam. And this is what was taught in the curriculum in the Faculty of Hadith in Islamic University of Medina. I think it still is the curriculum. Al-Muharrar is similar to Bulugh al-Maram. We'll talk about it shortly. You have Ad-Durr al-Manzum by Al-Mulghatayah al-Hanafi. Again, it's a very good book, and he has about 400 hadith. And his condition is that he would only mention the hadith that are in Kutub al-Sittah. And he would start off with the authentic hadith and then go into the weak hadith and then mention the statements of the scholars regarding those hadith. We have إحكام الأحكام الصادرة من شفتي خير الأنام by Ibn Naqqash. Then after that we have تقريب الأسانيد by Al-Iraqi. Now تقريب الأسانيد by Al-Iraqi, he said that there's 2 Iraqis, there's the father and the son. This is by the father. Okay? And in this book there's approximately 600 hadith, but he said, I'm trying to gather those ahadith which it said that these ahadith have the most authentic narrations, most authentic asanid, chains of narration. Asahhu al-asanid, the most authentic chains of narration. We talked about this before, that you can't say that one particular chain is the strongest, but he's saying that all these 600 are ones which are considered the most strongest. And he's got an explanation of it as well, called طرح التثريب. طرح التثريب في شرح التقريب. And he goes into a lot of detail. For example, when it comes to إنما الأعمال بالنيات, mentions 50 different issues pertaining to that hadith. After that, what's mentioned is بلوغ المرام by Ibn Hajar, very famous book, which we're going to talk about shortly. There's Al-Gharam في أدلة الأحكام by Al-Khayḍari. Again, this is a very good book. One of my teachers, Sheikh Muhammadi Masjid, he prefers this book. He goes from all of them, he prefers this book the most. And what's good in here as well is that he starts off by mentioning 13 hadith. And he says the whole religion revolves around these 13 hadith. So he starts off with 13. So Imam al-Nawawi has 40, right? He summarizes it and says there's 13 hadith which encompass the whole religion. And then he mentions the hadith pertaining to fiqh. When it comes to Kitab al-Nikah, he actually has a separate, or he starts off by mentioning some of the khasa'is of the Prophet ﷺ, specialities of the Prophet ﷺ. So he adds a lot of things. Because obviously Nikah, the Prophet ﷺ, from his specialities is that he was allowed to marry more than 4. So over there he started to talk about other things which are specific to the Prophet ﷺ as well. And also what he does in here is that every chapter he starts off with an ayah from the Quran. And then he mentions the hadith after that, and he explains and he gives the rulings upon the hadith. It's a very, very good book. And there's Fath al-Ghaffar by الصنعاني. There's كفاية المستقنع by المرداوي. المجموع في الحديث على أبواب الفقه. The whole name is المجموع في الحديث على أبواب الفقه by Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah. And there are many books. Just a couple of points regarding Kutub al-Ahkam. I've mentioned to you all these books. How many books is that? Who's going to count? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's count. Come on. Huh? You got 16? I count 17. Qasim, you're 17. One of the books is 2 in it. Abdul, you counted it as 1. Come on, you're the maths guy. Right, so just some points regarding Kutub al-Ahkam. Kutub al-Ahkam are very important books. Okay? Because you're directly studying hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and there's so many benefits to that. So, from the benefits is that you're learning the dalil directly. From the benefits, if you study it properly, you learn how to extract a ruling from a hadith. So you actually see the way it's being extracted. You learn about the Sahaba and how they were because of the questions that they would ask and so on. And by studying hadith, you're not restricted to one madhab as well. Like if you study a book of fiqh. But at the same time, as I alluded to in the previous lesson as well, is that what's best if a person, he combines between the two. Studying these books and fiqh books as well. Because hadith isn't the only dalil, there's other adillah as well. And if you take the explanation of a teacher, then you're studying basically his madhab, what he has understood. And there's so many issues that we studied when we studied comparative fiqh, how the different madhahib would differ, but they would all use the same hadith. So you're not saying that this person goes against hadith, it's the understanding and the usul. So that's what the ulama, they say you should combine between fiqh al-dalail and fiqh al-masail. Fiqh al-dalail, yani fiqh al-dalil. Fiqh al-dalil is studying from hadith. And fiqh al-masail of issues, i.e. through the fiqh books. If you combine between the two, then that is best. And that's what Shaykh Qasim, Al-Masih Qasim would do with us. He would teach half an hour Zad al-Mustaqni', which is the fiqh book, and then the second half an hour he would teach Bulugh al-Maram. He would teach both. And what he would do is that he would actually test everyone in the beginning. He'd make us memorize both books. So he would listen to everyone's, let's say the hadith, and then he would explain. So that's why these books you should try to memorize as well. Now obviously a lot of these books, there's a lot of names, what I've done, the main ones that I've highlighted, I've brought them again. So if you come to page 93, and these are the main ones that you need to know, minimum. Okay? You don't need to know, all the others, for now, you don't need to know. The first one is, and this is how you should study them as well. So after you study 40 Hadith of Nawawi, the next book you should study is Umdatul Ahkam by Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. Now, this book only has 423 Hadith. However, the good thing about Umdatul Ahkam is, firstly, it's not the biggest book. It's a short book and it can be finished very easily. 423 Hadith. Compared to Bulugh al-Maram, which is about 1200. And you've got the Muntaqa al-Akhbar, it's at 3000. Right? So this is 423. And secondly, every hadith in here is authentic. Why? Because it's in Bukhari or Muslim or both. Every hadith in Umdatul Ahkam is authentic because it's either in Bukhari or Muslim or it's in both of them. That's the benefit of this. And there's many explanations of this book. Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah has 2 explanations. He's got one in 2 volumes, which is titled Sharh Umdatul Ahkam, and he's got one in 1 volume, Tanbih al-Afham. And I think one was taken as transcribed from his lessons, and the other one he might have wrote himself. And there's so many different explanations, so many contemporary explanations. Shaykh Fawzan's got an explanation. But one of the best ones that the ulama advise is by Shaykh Bassam, which is known as Taysirul A'lam. Taysirul A'lam, because he just comes to the hadith and mentions the main benefits that you take from the hadith, and he moves on. And there's some which are more detailed. Ahkam al-Ahkam by Ibn Daqiq al-Eid is very detailed, it's very usuli, it's very difficult as well. The point being is that there's many, but for you guys, what you guys just need to focus on is that when you study that book, inshallah, and bi'idhnillah, the plan is to teach it in our level 2, which after the Al-Arba'un, we've just got one more book, I think, and then we move on to level 2, inshallah. So all you have to focus on is the explanation of your teacher. You don't need to worry about all of the explanations. After Umdatul Ahkam comes Bulugh al-Maram. After Umdatul Ahkam comes Bulugh al-Maram. Now Bulugh al-Maram has 1352 hadith. 1352 hadith. And not everything is authentic, because it's not got the same condition Bukhari and Muslim, but it's got all of the main ahadith that you need in fiqh. This is the main book that you need to, if you memorize, you need to solidify, you need to keep revising, keep going over. This is the main one. So Umdatul Ahkam is like a smaller one, which if you can memorize and stick to it is good, but it's like more of an intro. If you're serious, then Bulugh al-Maram is the one. Bismillah. But most people in UK are not serious, so even if you do Umdatul Ahkam, then that's a very big achievement, because most students have not memorized Umdatul Ahkam. Inshallah, I will make you guys memorize it. I mean, it's a big difference. There's 1,000 hadith difference anyway, extra hadith. From the 400 hadith that are in Umdah, majority of them are in Bulugh. Majority are in Bulugh. There's a couple or a few here and there. A majority are in there. There's actually a few books. There's one book, At-Tamam fi Ahadith al-Ahkam. That was one I used to memorize. I didn't finish it, but I was memorizing that one, where he got all the hadith in Umdah and in Bulugh and also in Muharrar, which we're going to get to. And he put all of them together. So it came up to about 1800 hadith or something like that. Now, so that is Bulugh al-Maram. And again, it has so many explanations. San'ani has a very famous explanation, which is Subul al-Salam. Ibn Uthaymin has got a very long explanation, 15 volumes. Fathat al-Jalali wal-Ikram. I've written for you those explanations. Shaykh Fawzan's got an explanation. Like I said, all you need to focus on is your teacher's explanation for the time being. The next book is Al-Muharrar. Al-Muharrar by Ibn Abdul Hadi. This is the book which is the part of the curriculum in the Islamic University of Medina in Faculty of Hadith. This is what they teach. And this book has more ahadith than Bulugh al-Maram. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but it's got more hadith than Bulugh al-Maram. I think it's approximately 1500 or 1600 hadith. But the main difference is 2. First, Ibn Abdul Hadi was more Hanbali. So his hadith are more geared that way. Whereas Ibn Hajar in Bulugh al-Maram is Shafi'i. However, there's not a big issue. Why? Because generally, the Malikiyya, the Shafi'iyya, and the Hanabila use same hadith. It's just their understanding of the hadith. Obviously, Hanafis have their own. And not completely separate, but they tend to differ the most. But the other three are very similar. That's why Bulugh Maram, even though it's by Ibn Hajar who's Shafi'i, all the Hanbalis teach it as well. And because it's hadith under this hadith, you can't say the hadith is a Hanbali hadith. It's hadith. So that's the first slight difference. The second difference is when it comes to the ruling of the hadith. Now, Imam Ibn Hajar does give the ruling of the hadith. He'll mention the takhrij and he'll give us a quick ruling. But Al-Muharrar is known for going into depth when it comes to commenting on the hadith and mentioning the hidden defects of the hadith and so on. The third difference, actually, another one came to mind as well, is that Al-Muharrar isn't makhdum. What's makhdum mean? Widespread is okay. From the khidmah. It's not been serviced, or it's not been as much, meaning you won't really find explanations of it. No, not in people explaining it, videos, nor even books. But Bulugh al-Maram, so many explanations. You'll find in English, you'll find in Arabic, you'll find videos, you'll find books, everything. The only place that I personally know that teaches Muharrar is the Faculty of Hadith in the uni. Although I don't know anyone else who teaches Muharrar. Probably are here and there, but the point is that it's not as famous. Bulugh al-Maram, you'll find everyone teaching it. But obviously, some say you should start with this book, but I personally don't advise it. Why? Because majority of the people that I know who study this book, whether it's study or even teach it, they don't finish it. They know Kitab al-Tahara, maybe Salah, and that's about it. Once you start asking them questions after Zakat, they don't have a clue. So that's why I say to start with Umdat al-Ahkam, at least finish a book, and then go into Bulugh al-Maram after that. We have after this Muntaqa al-Akhbar, al-Muntaqa fi al-Ahkam. It's also called, that's the full name, Muntaqa fi al-Ahkam الشرعية من كلام خير البرية. Okay, that's the full name. No. Anyways, famously known as Al-Muntaqa. This is by the grandfather Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. It has approximately 4,000 hadith. It says here 3,926. 3,926. And there's one main explanation for it, which is Nail al-Awtar by Imam al-Shawkani, which I've written for you there. Nail al-Awtar by Imam al-Shawkani. And with that, alhamdulillah, we finished the Kutub al-Ahkam. So the main Kutub al-Ahkam that you need to know: Umdat al-Ahkam, Bulugh al-Maram, al-Muharrar, al-Muntaqa. Okay? And in terms of studying, the main two, and if you do these two and you stick to them and you know them inside out, it'll be enough, inshallah. Umdah and Bulugh. Al-Muharrar, you can skip. It's very similar to Bulugh anyway, but apart from the extra hadithi information, but in terms of the actual hadith, very similar. And then obviously Muntaqa al-Akhbar is really big. The next issue I want to talk about is Mustalah al-Hadith. You've heard this a lot, right? What exactly is Mustalah al-Hadith? Inshallah, because I've mentioned it so many times, you should have a picture of what Mustalah al-Hadith is now. But just to formally define it, then Mustalah al-Hadith, the definition that is given by the ulama, is that it is ilmun bima'rifati al-qawa'id, knowledge regarding the principles, ilmun bima'rifati al-qawa'id, allati yutawassalu biha, which allows you to reach ma'rifati hal al-rawi wal-marwi, to reach knowledge regarding the state of the narrator and the narration. Knowledge pertaining to the principles which allow you to reach knowledge of the state of the narrator and narration. So علم بمعرفة القواعد التي يتوصل بها إلى معرفة حال الراوي والمروي. So it's principles, and obviously it's included initially definitions, but then after those definitions, principles pertaining to them. For example, Sahih Hadith. What are the conditions of Sahih Hadith? And even within those conditions, a lot of issues as well, and so on. All these we consider them principles. We use these principles to now find out the state of the narrator. Is he authentic? Is he not authentic? Is he trustworthy? Is he not trustworthy? And of the narration, is the hadith sahih or is it da'if? So therefore, the subject matter of Mustalah al-Hadith is the hadith of Prophet ﷺ in terms of sanad and the matan, the chain and the text. So what are the things that you're applying these principles to? Hadith, sanad and matan. And what's the benefit? The benefit is that these principles allow you to know which ahadith are accepted and which are rejected. Ma'rifatul maqbuli wal mardud. To know what is accepted and what is rejected. And it has many names as well. It's known as Mustalah al-Hadith. It's also sometimes referred to as Ulum al-Hadith. Ulum al-Hadith. It's also sometimes referred to as Usul al-Hadith. Ilmu Usul al-Hadith. Which means like the foundations foundation principles of Hadith. And sometimes they even call it Ilm al-Hadithi Diraya. So we have riwayah and dirayah. Riwayah is the narration of hadith and studying the hadith itself. And these principles are known as dirayah. Ilm al-hadith dirayah. A lot of people make a mistake. People think dirayah when it comes to hadith is the understanding, the fiqh of the hadith. La, dirayah is mustalah al-hadith. Its importance, we've talked about it before, the importance of the sanad. And so a similar answer, which is that without these principles, we cannot know whether we can accept this hadith or not. Because acting upon a hadith is dependent upon its authenticity. And therefore, this science is a wasila. It is a means to acting upon hadith and accepting hadith and rejecting hadith. And it is a tool from ulum al-alah. It is a tool which allows you to understand hadith. There's no point going into depth regarding a hadith and explaining it from 500 different angles and then find out it's fabricated. Naam. Means. And in the beginning of this course, we talked about the stories of the Sahaba and how they would criticize the narrators and check. That's all part of Mustalahu al-Hadith. Now we have a number of books. Okay, and all of these books, I've commented on these books by in the footnotes. I've commented on some of the books and what they've talked about. We have the first book. So this is a quick summary of Mustalah Hadith. The way it worked is that in the beginning, there weren't any separate books when it came to Mustalah al-Hadith. There weren't separate books when it came to Mustalah al-Hadith. So obviously, as we mentioned before, in the time of the Sahaba, they started criticizing hadith, but it was just orally, bring me a witness. Nothing was written. Once you came to the second century, then some of these issues were talked about, but they were part of bigger books. Like Imam al-Shafi'i talked about some of these issues in his book Al-Risalah and his book Al-Umm. But those books, Al-Risalah has Usul al-Fiqh and a bit of Mustalah, has a lot of different issues in there. Likewise Al-Umm. Then you come to the 3rd century, and now the 3rd century, as we mentioned, this is when hadith started to really be written down. That's why we have the 6 books of hadith and so many other books. And a lot of them talked about many of the issues of Mustalah hadith. But there wasn't a separate book of hadith still. So in the 3rd century we had Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Yahya ibn Ma'in, Ali ibn Madini, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, all of these scholars who are known as imams when it comes to this field. But they never had a separate book. Until we come to the 4th century. In the 4th century, there came a person known as, and I've written his name for you, I've just written the last name. He's famously known as Ar-Rama Hurmuzi. Ar-Rama Hurmuzi. His full name is Abu Muhammad Al-Hasan ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Khallad. Al-Hasan ibn Abdul Rahman ibn Khallad Ar-Rama Hurmuzi, who passed away in the year 360 after Hijrah. He passed away in the year 360 after Hijrah. He was the first one to write a book in Mustalah al-Hadith. But as you know, if somebody's the first person to do something, they're not going to do it, not going to talk about everything. So he didn't incorporate anything, and there are many general things, and it's not exactly how we understand Mustalah al-Hadith or how it is now. After him came Imam al-Hakim. We talked about the Mustadrak of Hakim. Imam Hakim came. He's got a book called Ma'rifatu Ulum al-Hadith. Ma'rifatu Ulum al-Hadith. He mentioned 52 types of hadith in here. So very good. 52 types of hadith, but it's still not in like a correct order, it's not in a good order, but he's got 52 types of hadith within there. After that comes Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi. Khatib al-Baghdadi. Now Khatib al-Baghdadi, as I said, there's not science from the sciences of hadith except that he's written a book in it. There's not science from the science of hadith except that he's written a book in it. When it comes to Mustalah hadith generally, then the main book that he's got, and this is one of the main books generally, is Al-Kifayah fi ilm al-riwayah. Al-Kifayah fi ilm al-riwayah. And he's got another book called Al-Jami' li akhlaq al-rawi wa adab al-sami', which is also a very famous book. And in there he talks a lot about the etiquette of a student of hadith and so on. So some of the issues of Mustalah are also mentioned in here. Then we had others, Al-Ilma' by Qadi Iyad. We've got other books, Jami' al-Usul Ibn al-Athir. But later, if you come at number 8, which is the one in bold, we have Ma'rifatu Anwa'i Ulum al-Hadith. This is the main one now. By Ibn al-Salah. By Ibn al-Salah. Now this is a name that you have to know. Ibn al-Salah. He wrote his book Ma'rifatu Anwa'i Ulum al-Hadith, and is famously known as Muqaddimah Ibn al-Salah. That's a very famous name for it. Muqaddimah Ibn al-Salah. Here, what he did is that he gave very precise definitions which weren't found before. He ordered a Mustalah hadith in a manner which was not done before. And because of how good it was, this book became widespread, and everybody who came after him is dependent upon his book. All of the books after go back to this book. For example, we have Ikhtisar Ulum al-Hadith by Ibn Kathir. That's a summary of this book. Ikhtisar, summary of Ulum al-Hadith. We have the 1,009 poetries, Alfiyat al-Iraqi. The 1,009 poetry by Imam al-Suyuti, Alfiyat al-Suyuti. There are 1,009 poetries of this book. So there's so many people who have worked on this book, explained this book, give footnotes on this book, summarized this book, made it into a poem. Everyone goes back to this book. We have Irshad al-Tullab by Imam al-Nawawi. And Imam al-Nawawi's got another book as well, which is At-Taqrib. At-Taqrib wa Taysir li Ahadith Bashir al-Nadhir. This is by Imam al-Nawawi. This is a very good book in Mustalah al-Hadith, where he wrote the book Al-Irshad first, then he summarized it into this book. And then Imam al-Suyuti came along later and he explained this book, At-Taqrib. And he called it Tadrib al-Rawi. This book, Tadrib al-Rawi, is taught in Medina University in the Faculty of Hadith. So the explanation, so Imam al-Suyuti's explanation of this book by Nawawi, At-Taqrib. So Imam al-Suyuti's book is called Tadrib al-Rawi. Tadrib al-Rawi. That's the one which is taught in the Islamic University of Medina and the Faculty of Hadith. After this, we have obviously Alfiyat al-Iraqi by Imam al-Iraqi. You have Nukat of Ibn Salah by Ibn Hajar. Nukhbat al-Fikr by Ibn Hajar. So Nukhbat al-Fikr, inshallah, is a book that we will study. So the first book we might study, I'm not sure yet. Inshallah, we'll study both, but part of my syllabus, I don't know yet. Do I put Bayquniya or do I put Nukhbat al-Fikr? Right? Bayquniya is shorter, but it's got a few issues. Nukhbat al-Fikr is a bit bigger and it's more precise. So I'm not sure. But inshallah, both I'll teach. One will be part of the syllabus, one will just be generally maybe in one of the Dorat or something like that. But we'll see, inshallah. I taught it recently, Bayquniya, in London at Masjid Imam Nawawi. I did the whole book, I think, in 2.5 hours. So you can, maybe 3. If you take the intro out, it's 2 hours. Half an hour intro. So that's 2.5 hours. So you can easily watch that if you want to. Yeah, Alfiyat al-Suyuti, that number 17, Tadrib al-Rawi, fi Sharh Taqrib al-Nawawi by Suyuti. That's the one that I was explaining. That is the one which is taught in Islamic University of Medina. Number 18 is Al-Manzum al-Bayquni by Imam al-Bayquni. Right. Obviously, today, you guys are getting an overload with names. A lot of names. Right? Anyone lost when it comes to the names of the books? If you've not put your hand up, you're lying to me. If it's the first time you're studying this, you've not put your hand up. Ahmed? You don't know what's going on. Right. I can see some of you falling asleep. Huh? Some of you just. Right. I know it's a lot. But what I'm telling you now is what you kind of need to know. If you were to study Mustalah al-Hadith again, generally, obviously there might be this odd person, but generally no one's going to mention more than what I've mentioned to you. Nobody's going to mention more books. You guys don't understand the amount of research that's gone into these worksheets. Everything that you need, just come back to here. This is the foundations. Keep going back to this. Okay? To make Mustalah al-Hadith easier for you, to know the books, I'll summarize. Mustalah al-Hadith went through 3 main stages. This is a summary. Okay? In terms of books. Actually, let's make it 4. Obviously, the first is when he was firstly officially written, which is by Al-Hurmuzi, who passed away in the year 360. His book is called, I didn't mention it, but it's written. That's why I need the worksheets. Al-Muhaddith al-Fasil bin al-Rawi wal-Wa'i. Okay? Right. Do you have the worksheets? Why? Huh? You need contact. We didn't finish the introduction now. What's the point? Right? Contact the number, inshallah. Everything's written. Everything I've said so far, 98% is written. Right? And I've got the death dates there, I've got the spelling for you there, you don't need to think about how to spell it. Everything is there. Right? You don't take notes. You're going to start. People who are taking notes are lost. How are you not taking the notes? Unless you're some secret Imam al-Bukhari and then I'll know why you're going to repeat everything that I've said and correct me as well. No? Achha. The first stage, as you said, is the official first book, which was written by Al-Hurmuzi, which is Al-Muhaddith al-Fasil bin al-Rawi wal-Wa'i. The second is Khatib al-Baghdadi, in his book Al-Kifaya fi Ilm al-Riwayah. Because as we said, so he wrote about everything. In his book, not only in this book, like I said, there's not a book, there's not a science from science of hadith except that he's written in it. Then the third stage is a stage of Ibn al-Salah. What Ibn al-Salah did, he basically got all of the works of Khatib al-Baghdadi, they're all separated, and all of the other separated books and works of the other ulama, put it all together, ordered it, give good definitions, and made it into like a proper science. Hence why it's the main book now. Yeah? And then number 4 is Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. What did Ibn Hajar do? Ibn Hajar very precise when it comes to research. So he basically looked at everything Ibn Salah said and what everybody else has done, and basically perfected the science. Simple. Obviously, you can't say everything's 100% perfect, but basically perfected the science. Give very, very precise definitions, researched a lot of issues, and basically reshuffled a few things here and there. And that's why the way most people, or nearly everyone, explains hadith now, they follow the methodology of Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. And that's why if somebody also says, Al-Hafiz said, Qal Al-Hafiz, they mean Ibn Hajar. The Hafiz said, Ibn Hajar. What's a Hafiz in hadith? That's nothing. What are you going less for? 100,000 is nothing. Somebody asked Imam Ahmed. Someone memorizes 100,000 hadith. Is he a Hafiz? He said, no. 200,000? No. 300,000? No. 400,000? Arju. I hope so. How many hadith? 400,000. Some of us have memorized 4 hadith. Right? So how's everyone's memorization of Al-Arba'un coming along? If we memorized 5 hadith. No, let's stick to this number. If we memorized 4 hadith. Not one person has memorized 4 hadith. Oh yeah, that's disappointing that. Didn't I say that before we start, everyone should have done at least 10? Any hadith. No one's memorized any hadith. Alright. You know what that shows? That shows that students always want detail for the simple stuff they can't do. Right. Alhamdulillah, with that we finished the whole introduction of hadith. The whole introduction of hadith, alhamdulillah, we finished it. Big sigh of relief, yeah? You missed the last 3 lessons. Right, quickly, just to make it easier for you guys, let's finish off the intro. And what I'll do is I'll give Thursday off so that you can revise everything, memorize these books. Next Tuesday we'll have a revision session. We'll have a revision session next Tuesday. And next Thursday, exam on the whole intro. Okay? Now, my idea is I give you Thursday off so that you can go over it. So when it comes to Tuesday, you have fully revised everything. And I'll just test you guys, just to see how it is, and any small questions you might have, you can ask me. However, realistically, are you going to do that? Or should I make the revision session this Thursday, and then I'll give you the whole week to revise after that? The revision session is more beneficial if you revise from before. So do you want the revision session this Thursday, or do you want it next Tuesday? Ahmed? Tuesday, okay. Right, Tuesday. Let's quickly go through the introduction. Second introduction, the author of the book. So now we're going to talk a bit about Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah himself. Now, Imam al-Nawawi, his name is Yahya ibn Sharaf. Now I've read the whole thing. Yahya ibn Sharaf ibn Muri ibn Hazm ibn Hussein ibn Muhammad ibn Jum'a ibn Hizam. You don't need to know all of that. Yahya ibn Sharaf, that's the minimum you need to know. Yahya ibn Sharaf. And he's from a place called Nawa. Nawa is a place in Damascus. It's a village in Damascus. Now, you can say Nawawi and you can also say Nawawi. Both are correct. You can say Nawawi, you can say Imam al-Nawawi as well. When we say that, people will look at you funny, so I don't say it. His laqab, he was given a title, Muhyiddin, the reviver of the religion. The reviver of the religion. And he was actually given this title while he was alive, but he didn't like it, and he forbade the people from calling him that. His kunya is Abu Zakaria. And a lot of people whose names Yahya, that because of the prophets, they take the kunya Abu Zakaria. Now, there's a lot of writing that I've written for you here. A lot of that writing you can read in your own time. I will just summarize for you. Okay? In terms of his upbringing, so he was born in the year 631. And what I've mentioned here is a story of how when he was young, all the other kids would be playing, but he would be studying. And an old man saw him and then realized the potential within Imam al-Nawawi. Obviously at that time, he wasn't Imam al-Nawawi. At that time, he was Yahya. He was a kid. He was a youth. That's the word, right? I often like it when I use slang words. Right? He was a young boy. So this old man went to his father. And he said to his father that I see a lot of potential in him. You should make him seek knowledge of Islam. Now his father didn't want him to do that. His father wanted him to work and make money for the family. But eventually his father agreed. And Imam Nawawi went to seek knowledge. And he then became Imam al-Nawawi. Rahimahullah and yarhamukallah. So the point of this story is never belittle a good word. Never belittle a small advice that you can give. This old man wasn't a great scholar. No one knows him. Even if I mention his name, Yasin ibn Yusuf al-Marakashi. You've never heard of the guy. But inshallah, he gets all of the reward of Imam al-Nawawi. Why? Because he was the means, Allah made him the means to allow Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah to go and study. I've written here, you can read it all the time. him studying and so on. He have written benefit. The Prophet said, whoever guides to something good, then he will have a reward similar of the one who does it. Right, that's what I just talked about. I've written here, is there a similar story that we've took recently? I don't know any similar story that we've mentioned regarding somebody where somebody would just say a word and that would cause them to do something. Imam Muslim, one of the students did ask him to write Sahih Muslim. Good. Anyone else? Bukhari is Ishaq ibn Rahuya. Yeah, we mentioned it. How do you say it? Ishaq ibn Rahwi. Rahwi. Sahaha. Rahuya. Rahuya. Or you even say it the grammarian way, you say Rahawi. Naam. He had a lot of desire for learning. They used to say that he used to have 12 lessons a day and he would revise 12 lessons a day. And he preserved his time a lot. Even simple things. When guests would come over, he would honor the guests, but whilst talking to them, he'd be sharpening a pencil. So later on, he didn't have to waste time sharpening a pencil. Things like that. That's what the ulama would preserve their time. You can read all of that yourselves. His main books, if you come to page 104, the first 5 books written here are in hadith. So he's got Al-Minhaj, Sharh Sahih Muslim ibn Hajjaj. What's that? Al-Minhaj. Of what? The main explanation of Sahih Muslim. Al-Minhaj, right? We've talked about it before. He's got another book called Al-Adhkar. Again, a very good hadith book where he's got all those hadith pertaining to adhkar and du'as and so on. He's got Riyadh al-Salihin. Again, a very famous book. There's not a masjid or a house except that you have the book Riyadh al-Salihin in there. At-Taqrib wa Taysir al-Ma'rifat al-Sunan Bashir al-Nadhir. What book is this? The one, the summary of his other book, but it's the one which is explained by Imam Suyuti, Tadrib al-Rawi. And Tadrib al-Rawi is the one which is taught in the faculty of Hadith, for the science of Mustalah Hadith, in the faculty of Hadith. And he's got Al-Arba'un fi Mabani Islam wa Qawaid al-Ahkam, yani 40 Hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. These 5 books are in the science of Hadith. Number 6, 7, and 8 are 3 books in Shafi'i fiqh. He's got Rawdat al-Talibin, Minhaj al-Talibin, and Al-Majmu'. Al-Majmu' is more comparative fiqh. It's more comparative fiqh. So he's got all of the madhahib in there when he explains. But he didn't finish it. He only reached the chapter of riba in transactions. After that, somebody else finished it off. Can't remember the name. One of his students. So somebody else had finished it off. He didn't complete it. Number 9 and 10, Tahdhib Asma' al-Lughat and At-Tahrir fi Alfaz al-Tanbih. These are 2 books which explain meanings of words and terminologies in the Shafi'i fiqh. And the last book written here is At-Tibyan fi Adabi Hamlat al-Quran, which is a very good, short book. Inshallah, we should study it, bismillah, which is basically the etiquettes of the carrier of the Quran. The etiquettes of the carrier of the Quran. There's 2 books that come to mind when you talk about etiquettes of the the carrier of the Quran. The first is this by Imam Nawawi. Then there's one by Imam al-Ajurri called Akhlaqu Hamlat al-Quran, the mannerisms of. This is At-Tibyan fi Adabi Hamlat al-Quran. The other one is Akhlaq Hamlat al-Quran by Imam al-Ajurri, who also passed away in the 4th century. These are 2 good books. His Aqidah. Now, a lot of Ahl Bid'ah like to claim him and say that he's Ash'ari, but in reality, he is actually from Ahl Sunnah. And if you were here for the Dawra with the Mashayikh last year, Shaykh Islam al-Sahimi gave a 40-minute answer clarifying this point, and we made it into a separate clip onto our channel, and I've put the link in here as well, I think. Have I? Yeah, I have at the bottom. But I've summarized it. So I listened to the whole thing and I summarized it for you in 3 answers. The first is that he retracted. So there's many statements that you can find where he has retracted from the mistakes that he made. Number 2 is that the methodology that he used was not the same methodology of the Ash'ari. So the Ash'ari, they only affirm 7 attributes of Allah. That's it. For some reason, 1 second, my Zoom stopped. So he didn't do that. He affirmed more than 7. he did not give precedence to the aql over the naql. He did not use the same principles. So therefore, point number 3 is, therefore, if you do find any statements where he's agreeing with the Asha'ira, you say they're mistakes that he made. He is from Ahlul Sunnah, and in a few issues he made a mistake. Just because a person makes a mistake doesn't make him from Ahlul Bid'ah. You only become Ahlul Bid'ah if you take their usul. If you take their principles. All of us make mistakes. Right? For example, the Prophet said, أربع من كنا فيه كان فيهن خصلة من النفاق حتى يدعها من إذا حدث كذب. The Prophet said 4 qualities. We're going to take it. Hadith number 48, I think. Or 47. The Prophet said that there are 4 qualities. If you have it, then you have a qualities of hypocrisy. The first one is the حدث كذب. When you speak, you lie. When the person speaks, you lie. That's it. Somebody lies once, he's a hypocrite in the hellfire forever. La. It doesn't mean that. So not everything which is just because you said something which corresponds with what somebody else said doesn't necessarily mean that you are one of them. So that's the summarized answer of that, and I've written more detail for you on this page. And then he passed away in the year 676. So that means when he passed away, he was only 45 years old. He was only 45 years old. So somebody may say, if he's so young, how did Allah place so much acceptance in him? The first book in hadith which is studied is his book. Riyadh al-Salihin, there's not a masjid or a house except it has his book in it, and so on. And one of the main answers the ulama give, and obviously only Allah knows the reality, but they say it was due to his sincerity. It was due to Imam Al-Nawawi rahimahullah, his sincerity. And his sincerity can be seen in many things. So for example, if you look at the story behind the 40 hadith Imam Al-Nawawi, we're going to mention the story later, but there was a scholar called Ibn Salah, which you know now. He had a gathering, and he said, I have gathered 26 hadith which encompass the whole religion. And then he did imla, he narrated it to his students, 26 hadith. Imam Al-Nawawi came after Ibn Salah, took those 26 and added 16, which becomes 42. And that's the book, the 40 hadith of Al-Nawawi. It's actually 42, but the Arabs round up. Okay? And then Ibn Hajar came along later and added 8 more. Okay? Now, some people may say that's plagiarism. Most of his work, he's taken it from somebody else. If you did that now and you put it and turn it in, all read, it's not gonna be accepted. But Imam Nawawi, what did he do? He mentioned it. In one of the other books, he said that I took these books, these 26 hadith from Ibn Salah. He didn't try to make it seem like it was his own. It was his own. And that's why he said, and many other ulama have said, that one of the means of attaining barakah is by attributing the benefit to the person who said it. So if you hear a benefit, not a common benefit, but something which is not mentioned a lot, you should mention that who you heard it from, especially if your teacher heard it from my teacher and so on. So you attribute it to that person. Now, okay, the third introduction is about the book itself. Right, normally I'd finish the lesson here, but if you just give me 10 more minutes, inshallah, we can finish the whole introduction. Now, when it comes to arba'inat, now 40 arba'inat from the arba'in, which means 40, right? And what I want to mention here is those books generally, which contain 40 hadith. This was something which was done by the Salaf. There's many of the Salaf who wrote books containing 40 hadith. The first of them was Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. And I'll mention to you all the names, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But just before I mention the names, the books in those times, there were different types. Some were musnada, some were not musnada. Some had the chains of narration, some did not. Some were regarding certain chapters only. Chapter of zuhd, asceticism, a hadith into that, and that's it. So you just come to one topic, seeking knowledge, right? Let me put 40 hadith seeking knowledge, just that. Okay? And then they all had their different topics. Some had chapters, some didn't have chapters, some just had the hadith. So they had different types. And as I mentioned, the first one was Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, who passed away in the year 181. Right? You understand what that means now? Yeah, خلاص. After him came Muhammad ibn Aslam al-Tusi. Muhammad ibn Aslam al-Tusi, who passed away 242. And I mentioned to you a number of names, yeah? Muhammad ibn Aslam al-Tusi, who passed away 242. Then we had Ibrahim al-Dhuhali. Ibrahim ibn Ali al-Dhuhali, 293. Then you have Al-Hasan al-Naswi, 303. 303. Then you have Imam al-Ajurri. Imam al-Ajurri passed away 360. Who passed away? 360. You have Abu al-Hasan al-Daraqutni, Imam al-Daraqutni, who passed away 385. And then you have Imam al-Hakim. Imam al-Hakim had a book as well, who passed away 405. So as you can see, there are many of the Salaf who wrote books of 40 hadith. We're going to talk about why, and why the number 40 shortly, inshallah. The asl of this book, so here is, the asl of this book is, as I mentioned to you, Ibn Salah had a gathering where he titled it Ahadith Kulliyah, Universal Hadith, or those ahadith which contain the whole religion. And he narrated 26 hadith to his students. Then Imam al-Nawawi came along later, added 16 to make it 42. And then Ibn Rajab also came later, who added 8 more, made it 50, and then he explained all 50 as well. That is the main explanation of the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. It's by Ibn Rajab, called Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam. Jami' al-Ulum wal-Hikam. So how many hadith are in the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi? 42. Why is it called Arba'in? Why is it called 40? Because the scholars round up. Right now, if somebody asked me, how many students are there in a class, I'll say, what, 20. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Right, so somebody going to get up now, you are wrong, there's 19. We're just rounding up, it's fine, it's not an issue. Same thing here, the Arabs will just round up. 42, 40. What? Huh? Right, on page 108 I talked about the fa'idah of attribute and benefit. On the next page, on page 109, there are many explanations of the book. So there are all the explanations. Imam al-Nawawi has his own explanation, where he's explained some of the difficult words and so on. Al-Ishbili, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid has a good explanation, very small. Tufi, Ibn Mulaqqin has explanations. Contemporary ulama have explanations. Ibn Uthaymin, Shaykh Abbad, Ahmad Jamal Abu Yusuf, Shaykh Salih Fawzan. So many. The thing is, 40 hadith al-Nawawi is beautiful. It's so beautiful that so many scholars have explained it, and every book, every explanation has different benefits. Ibn Uthaymin is like more of an all-rounder. Shaykh Abdul Karim al-Khudair is more hadithi. Shaykh Fawzan is just nice and easy. Somebody will do it in a more linguistic way, one more hadithi way, one more fiqhi way. Because these hadith encompass the whole religion. Okay? All you have to focus on is the explanation of your teacher for now. Now, there are 4 main specialities of this book, i.e., 4 things which make this book special compared to other books. Yeah, you okay? You stand up for a bit, stretch, and then sit back down. The first is that these ahadith are all from Jawami' al-Kalim, the comprehensive speech. Al-Jawami' al-Kalim, the Prophet said, I have been given 5 things that no other Prophet has been given before me, and one of those things is Jawami' al-Kalim. There's something special to the Prophet ﷺ that other prophets did not have. And what is it? Jawami' al-Kalim, the definition the ulama give, is that the Prophet ﷺ would speak little, the wording is little, but the meaning is vast. The wording is little, but the meaning is vast. For example, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ 3 words. Imam al-Shafi'i said this hadith is equivalent to 1/3 of knowledge. And it enters into 70 different chapters of fiqh. And it's true, any issue in fiqh, or most of the issues in fiqh, most of the chapters in fiqh, you can apply this hadith. Whether it's in worship, you're praying 2 raka'at. Is that fajr or the 2 sunnah of fajr? How do you differentiate? Niyyah, you intend this hadith. You're having a shower. Is it just because you're cold? Is it a sunnah for Friday? Is it obligatory shower? What differentiates? Niyyah. That's worship. Even outside. For example, right now, let's say this phone costs £500. Okay, I don't know if it does, but let's say it costs £500. You're my friend. I say, look, I'll gift it to you for £200. I've said the word gift. Is it a gift? What's the intention? The intention, I'll still sell it to you, but just for cheaper. So what ruling would they take? Will they take the rulings of gifts or will they take the ruling of a transaction? Because of the intention. Even in talaq, if he uses a clear word, I give you talaq, I give you divorce, then khalas, it's divorce. But if a person uses words which are ambiguous, you don't know, it could mean divorce, it could just mean go away, right? For example, somebody says, go back to your mom's house. Right? Why are you laughing? Go back to your mom's house. Does that mean that I've divorced you? Or just mean leave me alone for a few days? Depends on the person's intention. If he intended divorce, it's a divorce. That all goes back to what? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So you can see how it's from the Jawami'u al-Kalim of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the second is that these ahadith encompass the whole religion. Second specialty is that it encompasses the whole religion. Number 3, the majority of what is in here is authentic. There's only a couple which are weak. Even the ones which are weak, the meaning is correct though. And the fourth is that they're very easy to memorize and to understand. Now, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah actually has an introduction. He actually has an introduction which he has written before the 40 hadith Imam Nawawi. It's in some manuscripts and some manuscripts it's not. So we are going to go through it, but before we go through it, I'll summarize for you. 7 things that Imam al-Nawawi mentioned in his introduction. And then we're going to go through the introduction. Okay, we'll go through it quickly inshallah. What are the 7 things that Imam al-Nawawi mentions? And we have titled it, The Conditions that he has of the book by Imam al-Nawawi. The first is that he mentioned that it's going to contain 40 hadith. It's going to contain 40 hadith. The second is that he said that these 40 hadith are going to encompass the whole religion. So far, straightforward. And number 3, he said not only is it going to encompass the whole religion, each hadith is a foundational hadith in that chapter. So it's not just a random hadith in that chapter, it's the main hadith in that chapter. It's a slight difference between point number 2 and point number 3. Point number 2 is just saying it's going to encompass everything. But number 3 is saying not only that, but for every chapter it's the main hadith. Number 4, he said that all of them are authentic. Now he said they're all authentic. We're going to clarify that there's a couple which aren't, but majority are. And then he mentions that the majority of the hadith are from Bukhari and Muslim, which is true. 29 hadith are in Bukhari and Muslim. So from the 42, how many in Bukhari and Muslim? 29. Number 6 is that he said he's going to remove the isnad. So he's not going to mention the whole chain of narration, he's just going to mention the sahabi. Why? Because it's easy, it's meant to be for, this book is not just for students of knowledge. Yes, my explanation is a bit more depth, but generally, the actual meaning of the book and the hadith are for everyone. In fact, I know a brother, he did a khutbah once. All he did, he got on the minbar, he just read out the 40 hadith from the beginning till end, and that's it. That was the end of the khutbah. And the last thing that he said is that after he mentions the 42 hadith, he'll explain some of the hard words. That's in some manuscripts. We won't go through that. Okay. Just to go through the introduction. Page 114 is him basically just praising Allah and sending salah on the Prophet ﷺ. We come to page 115 and he starts off with a hadith. So he says, to proceed, he has been narrated to us from Ali ibn Talib, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abu Darda, ibn Umar, ibn Abbas, Anas ibn Malik, Abu Hurairah, and Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet said, whoever preserves for my nation 40 hadith concerning its religion, Allah will resurrect him on the day of resurrection amongst a group of jurists and scholars. So he starts off with this hadith, that whoever preserves for my nation, my ummah, 40 hadith. Preserving meaning he narrates it to them. Because that's how you benefit the ummah. regarding the religion, then Allah will resurrect him as a jurist and scholar. And then in the next paragraph, he mentions other different narrations and other different rewards. One reward said, you can enter, if you do this, you enter any door of paradise that you wish, and so on. But at the last line, at the bottom of the page, what does he say? But hadith scholars have agreed that it is weak. It is a weak hadith despite its many narrations. So he starts off with this hadith, but he clarifies that it's weak, and it's very weak. And because it's very weak, even though it's got multiple narrations, it won't strengthen it to become Hasan. Some ulama have considered it Hasan, but generally, no, they all agree that it is weak. Okay? So even though he mentions this as a reason, it's not the primary reason why he wrote this book. Just keep this in mind. This is one reason, but it's not the primary reason. Then number two, he says the scholars, on the next page, have compiled within this context countless collections. The first one I have known to do so is Abdullah Mubarak, and then Ibn Aslam al-Tusi, and then he mentions the rest of the names. Basically, the second reason he mentions is that he's following the Salaf. He's following the actions of the Salaf. Then he says, I have done istikhara to Allah. What's istikhara? Is when you pray 2 rak'at and you make the dua of istikhara when you want to do a certain action. And some people think that if you do istikhara, you're going to get a dream. You don't get a dream. Or it's not necessary that you have a dream. It's just, if you do istikhara, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that thing easy for you. And He gives you contentment in your heart for the action that you are doing. Okay, you need to leave, that's fine. Just watch the ending. I know today's going to be overtime, but I just want to finish it. And there's also a hadith of our Islam where he says, مَا خَابَ مَنِ اسْتَخَارَ وَلَا نَدِمَ مَنِ اسْتَشَارَ. That the one who does istikhara will never lose out, and the one who seeks counsel will never regret. So these are two things that you should do. Istikhara, and also seek counsel. Do mashwara. Ask people who are qualified for their opinions. And then after that, at the bottom of page 116, he says, but in spite of this, my reliance is not upon the hadith, but rather upon a statement amongst the authentic hadith. Let the one present among you convey to the absent, and his saying, may Allah make radiant the face of the person who heard my statement and grasped it and passed it on to the one who heard it. In simple terms, he's mentioned 3 reasons why he has written this book. The first is due to the weak hadith, but he's not based it upon this. The second is the actions of the Salaf. The third is the main, he's mentioned, this is the main reason. This is my actual dalil. Even though he's mentioned it as number 3, it actually should be number 1. Which is to attain all of the rewards and virtues of hadith, of narrating hadith. We mentioned many of them in the beginning. And then on page 117, he basically mentioned that other scholars have written in different topics. I'm going to write it from the whole religion, and then all of them are authentic from Bukhari, from Bukhari or Muslim, and I'm taking out the isnad, and so on. And with that, you can read it all, but he's basically finished his introduction there. And then on page 119 is just explaining our explanation. How am I going to explain these ahadith? And I've mentioned here on page 119 that what I'm going to do, I forgot to go down. Now, is our explanation is going to be an intermediate level explanation. Meaning it's not going to be too in-depth, nor is it going to be too basic. Now the first 5 hadith that we take are going to be a bit more in-depth. Now in Oldham, I did about 30 lessons, 10 with the introduction, take that, so 20 lessons, and we're only on hadith number 3 or something. So there I've gone into a lot of depth. I'm going to try to summarize that. I'll not mention exactly everything, but still the first 5 will be a bit more in-depth. After hadith number 5, it'll be quite short, inshallah. Okay? And the way I'm going to do it is I've mentioned 11 things. The first thing is the recitation of hadith from memory. Everyone should memorize the hadith, and I'm going to test you. Then after that, we'll read the hadith and the translation. And then we'll talk about the takhrij of the hadith. Is it Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi? Is it authentic, not authentic? We'll talk about that. Then number 4 will be hadith benefits. Are there any extra hadith benefits that I can mention? Number 5 is the narrator of the hadith. Number 5 is the status of the hadith. what's the state of the hadith and some aqwal of the ulama. Number 6 is the narrator of the hadith. Who was he? Number 7 is the reason for the narration of the hadith. Is there a story behind it? Number 8 is explaining the difficult words. Number 9 is giving a general meaning. Number 10 is explaining each sentence of the hadith. And number 11 is any extra benefits, if there are any extra benefits and I couldn't fit them in the actual hadith itself. And what do I expect from you? I expect all of you to write and complete the worksheets. If you don't have the worksheet, I'll make full notes yourself. Memorize the hadith. Memorize, especially the first 10, you should all memorize. Obviously, the mannerism of student of knowledge, having patience. I know the lesson's gone a bit longer. To be honest, it's not even the longest lesson. Since Maghrib, it's only been an hour or an hour and a bit. Right, what time do we start again? 7:25, oh, just an hour, right? Consistency and revision. So make sure you're consistent in attending and you are consistent in revising as well. And with that, alhamdulillah, we have completed and finished the whole introduction to the 40 hadith of Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, the whole history, and also we talked about Al-Arba'un and we talked about Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah. So you guys, inshallah, Thursday I'll give you off. Next Tuesday, revision session. And then next Thursday will be an exam, inshallah. Is that okay? Any questions? No? Okay, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.